It's Q&A time again. It's really good that you all ask these questions. Please do let them come in. I love to be able to answer your questions and help you. I know some people will learn from these because everyone is giving such interesting questions on problems they have in their garden. Hi Rosie, when is the best time to take mophead hydrangea cuttings? I'm in Gloucestershire, UK, and how long should I leave them up before potting on? The ones I took last year, which seemed to have rooted well, have stalled since potting on in individual plots. So with hydrangeas like the mophead hydrangeas, you want to be taking material in the late summer, somewhere where there isn't any flower growth and it's quite easy. You can cut off a dead head and you'll get some nice new growth. Semi-ripe or even soft cuttings are good, slightly longer than say a tip cutting, and allow them to root through. And I would suggest you leave them over winter rooted all together, and then in the spring pot them up, give them some food. It sounds like the ones that you had rooted last year and that you then put on perhaps haven't had enough moisture, because they do like a reasonable amount of watering and they need a bit more food. So remember to use things like maxi crop, which is the seaweed food, and that is very, very good for young plants to get going. And I'm sure they will carry on being good once you get them into a feed and watering regime. Please be aware, if you enjoy propagation, that we have produced a propagation workshop, which is an online course, and we will put up the link for you to be able to have a look at it. This is available for everybody all over the world. It is basically for herbaceous, with a few tips on soft cuttings of some shrubs. Hi Rosie, what strategies would you recommend for controlling bindweed in a garden bed? Okay, so this is dependent on whether you want to be doing it using spray or whether you want to be as organic as possible and as natural as possible. So if you are wanting to use a weed killer, then I would recommend at the early spring, when you see the bindweed starting to come through, you put in some canes and you allow the bindweed to wind itself up the canes. You then can spray or use a sponge with the, but do wear gloves, do take precautions, and just put that up and down over the leaf of the actual plant. Then cover the whole thing with a plastic bag so that it is all within the plant material itself. This will gradually go through down to the roots, and you will start to actually reduce the amount of bindweed you have. But one application is not going to fix it. You have to keep on applying, keep on applying. The other way, the organic way of doing it, also takes a long time, and you still probably will not eradicate it completely. The other option is move and get a new garden without it. That's probably not an option. So do not keep on digging it up, because the more you dig, the more you pull it, the more it wants to grow. So cutting off is what I would suggest. So exactly the same thing. You can still use the idea of getting it to go up canes, then you know where it is, and cut it off at the base. Do not pull. The more you reduce all of that top growth, the more you get rid of all of the way that it can feed, which is via its leaf that is coming up, you will reduce the actual strength of the plant that's there. But this is going to take you years of dedication to the cause of getting rid of it. Hi Rosie, I've got some voles in one of my borders and I've struggled with planting for a few years. The voles have killed many plants and I'm left with a rose, a daylily, alliums, annuals such as forget-me-nots, calendula and foxgloves. Could you recommend some perennials that are voles proof, please? Thank you. This is an incredibly difficult one to actually help with, I'm afraid, because if they've left the varieties that you've got there, then get some more different ones of those varieties, because they obviously don't like them. Other things that you have put in there have obviously got tasty roots, tasty leaves, and therefore that is what they're going for and they really like it. Now voles are actually quite useful because they do help you with your slug and snail population. So I think you've got to live with them a little bit, and as I say, just get some more of the varieties that you've already got and, you know, build up your borders with those. Sorry, I can't be much more help. So this is one who wants to know more about maintenance, and I've got two questions. One is, should they prune their honeysuckle to encourage branching while it still has new growth lower down? Another is diagnosing and fixing a fairy magnolia whose leaves are slowly going yellow and falling since it's been planted. Right, let's start with your magnolia. So yes, it sounds as though it is getting stressed. And stress in magnolia can either be overwatering or underwatering. It's more likely to be overwatering, too much moisture. So if the soil's getting too wet, it's not going to like it. So what I would suggest you can do, if this is still a young plant and it hasn't been in too long, perhaps you could dig it up from where it is and container grow it. Put it into a suitable John Innes mix with a good amount of grit so it's always got free drainage and you can add in some nutrient and see if that works. Now with your Lonicera, pruning a Lonicera will always help. So what I would suggest is that, you know, yes, it may have young growth coming from the top, but dead head, prune back, make it tidy. It will always help them. They will always grow back from there. Rosy, I want to move a gora plant that is planted in the wrong position in the garden. When's the best time to move it? Well, moving in the autumn, as long as you're not a frost pocket, is perfectly doable. Otherwise, if you're not in a rush to move it next spring. So wait until you see new growth at the bottom, dig it up, move it and put it to where you want it to be. I have a snowball bush that has one branch with the leaves of red brown, not dried up though, zone 5 Indiana, maybe because we had a cold last winter. Also it used to be in more shade, but I lost the tree last summer that shaded it. So the change in situation that the plant now sees itself in, and by snowberry I am assuming you mean a viburnum type. And if it's had a lot of shade beforehand and now it's come into a lot of sun, it could have got a little bit of stress and that could have caused the one branch to be a different colour. If you don't like it, then cut that branch out. You're not going to cause any harm to the plant itself. When you cut it out, just check whether or not it is actually alive, because it may be that it has had a bacterial infection in that actual branch, which is why it's gone that colour, and it will grow out again. So that is what I would suggest you do with that. Hello Rosy, the Arantia planted in spring have been entirely munched by slugs and snails. Shall I dig the plants out or leave them and stay optimistic? I have tried several slug repellents and everything else. The slugs and snails have been horrendous this year in the UK. We've had such a wet winter and spring. They've just loved it. And there is a population explosion. So you will find plants that don't normally succumb to slugs and snails are getting munched because there is so much population. They have just got to go and eat other things. I personally would just leave the plant there. I wouldn't bother trying any of the slug stuff. I don't think it's really going to work this year. And allow the plant, if it's still got a good root ball and there is still growth trying to come through, then in the spring next year it will probably get away quite well. The other thing you can look at as this is the sacrificial plant. This is the one that the slugs and snails are going to eat, and therefore they're not attacking the other plants in your garden. Hello Rosy, can you give me recommendation of shrubs for zone 6? Now I do have to look up your zones because obviously they're not something that we use here in the UK. We try and list them for you at when we put anything in. So from what I can gather, that means you've got a minus 17 degrees centigrade or even minus 22 degrees centigrade. So it's a really cold winter that you get, but you get a reasonably warm summer, etc. So you've got 2 Amelanchier ovalis in there, looking for 2 more shrubs, combination for sunny spot and clay soil. So 1 metre wide, 2 metre high, with the possibility that it could be cut down. So I was thinking about this and I was thinking, well, yeah, to go down that low, we need to look at this. So Arantia, that is a good plant. You will get good shape from that. You will get good seasonality on it. It flowers, it gives you good berries, and it also has a good autumn foliage. So that is one thing, and it can take pruning. Another one would be Cotinus, and there are lots and lots of different Cotinus out there. You can get dwarfer ones, you can get taller ones. So the ones that get taller you can just prune, and they are something that you can prune by stooling right the way down to about 20 centimetres from ground level, and then each year they'll go up, and they don't object to that type of pruning. Now, something else which is a favourite of mine, which may not be a suggestion that you would think about, but you would need a little bit of soil improvement, and that is abelias, and they're really great and they are tough, but you would need just a little bit of soil improvement to be able to grow that one. Rosy. Gall in fruit trees in a pot. Removed the roots and sieved. I intend to plant bare root roses. Is the infection likely to transfer? And if so, what happens, if any? Do I have to sterilise the soil and half barrel, please? Right. If you have got gall on fruit trees, then I'm sorry, if you want to put roses into exactly the same soil, then the roses can get gall. There are about 40 genera that get gall. Roses get what's known as crown gall, and that is where the roots just become bigger and bigger, and it's a bacterium, and this is transferred via the soil and water and containers. So you can put something other than roses in there which won't get the gall, but roses are not going to be ideal. Therefore, you will need to sterilise the soil. You will definitely need to sterilise the barrel, because if it's a wooden barrel, it will be holding the bacterium there as well. I hope that helps you. Rosy, last year I was excited my Persicaria purple fancy cuttings rooted. I gave most of them away, saved the rest in the greenhouse, and not one came back. I'm assuming they didn't like drying out. Okay, so if I'm doing the same this year, question is, should I leave them outside in their pots and let nature do its thing? I know they are hardy. Right, okay. No, they do not like drying out. So that is basically what happened. And yes, they are hardy to minus 20 degrees Celsius. So that is absolutely fine. So what I would suggest is your cuttings rooted, they're looking really good. If you've got a cold frame, put some in the cold frame in pots, put some outside, and then hopefully they will all survive for you. And that is the best way to do it, not put them inside and then them dry out. I have a raised bed with strawberries. This year ants and woodlice have moved in and helped themselves. The strawberries are 4 years old, plan to replant. How do I eliminate the pests from the soil? Do I need to replace the soil? The likelihood is that if you've got ants going in, you've got woodlice going in, then what will happen is, if it's a raised bed and they can come in from underneath, even if you replace the soil, after a year or so, they will come back because their tunnels and the way that they are getting in is still there. If they're coming up the sides of the woodwork, well, there's still not an awful lot you can do to stop it. You're going to have to live with it a little bit. Yes, you can put a liner into your actual raised bed. That way it will restrict them coming in that way, and then just keep an eye on them. But you do have to a certain degree, live with these pests and grow things that they don't actually want. So you might have to change to putting your strawberries into containers rather than having them in the raised beds, and then you can move them around out of the way of where any ants are. Hello Rosie, I have a fig tree which loses its leaves every year in June and July, then grows back after weeks. It's 8 years old in a large pot, produced figs last year, by November got caught by the frost. Okay, so this sounds like your plant is going under stress and getting too dry. June, July is the time when most people forget about the watering, and if you've got irrigation going on and it's watering at a set time all the time, you don't realise that something is getting really dry. In the summer, when you're getting to May, check 2 to 3 inches down below the surface of the soil and see whether or not there is any moisture there. If there isn't, then you need to water them well. Keep them well watered in those periods. That's what they really like. So that's something you've got to do. And it's not just a regular once a week. You've got to test it and see, because they could be using far more water than you are aware. That should stop you losing the actual leaf. The other thing is to make sure it's in the right position. So they should be on a south-facing wall or somewhere where it's warm and protected from cold winds. That way you should get the fruit ripening and actually get fruit from your trees. Hi Rosie, I sowed some cosmos last year from old seed. Most germinated, grew, but only very slowly. I'm assuming it's quality of the seed. My question is, can an annual continue growing, say over 2 years, if its growth rate is slow and it hasn't flowered? And by extension, can cosmos cope with the winter? Many thanks. Now, quite often with cosmos, especially when it's slightly older seed, is that they will grow, but they will always catch up. So what you find is that they slowly grow and you expect them to be flowering, say July time. They won't. They will keep going, they'll keep growing, and you'll suddenly find that they are flowering September, October, really late in the season. So that is one thing. And basically no, an annual basically grows, flowers, and then dies. They may struggle into the next year, but they will not go through. And cosmos do not like our cold, wet, soggy winters, so no, they won't keep on going. If you do find that you've got a few cosmos coming up, they will be seedlings from the previous plants. I have a Verbena Bon Arian in a pot. It's in its second year, it was wonderfully blooming, but now I guess because of the wet weather, it's already finished its bloom. My question is, can I cut back to ground level for a second flowering, as I saw you do in the Verbena Bampton? Okay, so the answer to that is basically yes, you can. So Verbena Bon Ariensis come up, they do all their stuff, and if you, before they put on too much seed, get them down and probably to about 10-15 centimetres, about 6 inches, then you will get them coming back up. But at the same time as you do that cutting back, you must give them a good water and you must give them some feed as well, and that way they will get up and they will start flowering again. They don't get quite so high, and if you're going to feed them, use something like a tomato feed or a seaweed food, say maxi crop. That's the best thing to get them going and get you a second flowering from them. My question is about deadheading giant hyssop black adder. It looks lovely when the first flush of flowers come out, bees flock to it, and when they start to fade it looks a bit raggedy. When I have deadheaded in the past, it doesn't seem to want to rebloom. It takes ages for a small amount to come. Should it be deadheaded? Am I leaving the faded flowers on before they get the chop, or does it only flower once? Now, yes, they will rebloom. And yes, you are leaving the old flower heads on there too long. So you can leave the old flower heads on there, let it look very architectural, and it will send up a few flowers. If you want it to do another good flower, then as soon as flowers are finished, give them a cut off and you'll get more coming through. And that's the best way to treat it. It's not one of those ones that you would need to wait and then give it a good haircut and then assume it's going to come back. No. It needs deadheading all the time to get you continually having lovely flower on the plant. Thank you very much for watching, and please do subscribe to the channel. If you want to watch another video of mine, YouTube thinks this one is perfect for you.